I'm really happy to have you here. Here we're talking about lessons learned in immigration and everything that we would love to hear ourselves when we just started, or maybe even in the consecutive months and years of our life abroad. Tell us, what was your first day in immigration, or maybe first week if you remember it a bit vaguely.
I'm Joana Ferreira. I'm originally from Portugal. Currently, I live in Malta, and I've lived in, if I've counted correctly, 9 countries so far since birth. Actually, because I wasn't even born in Portugal, so I was an immigrant from day one. But yes, I think I'm really happy to be talking about this topic. It's something that I love talking about because obviously, having moved so much my whole life, I have my own perspective, and I've also met a lot of people that had similar experiences growing up and or that are still doing it today. And I think it's really fun to just share stories and see how other people have experienced, because it's not the same for everyone. So even if you give someone advice, it's still just from your own perspective and your own experience. So it's nice to kind of get some different stories going and see how others have done it.
I remember you mentioned that you were still a child, right? That you started moving with your family. So, how was it different from you maybe taking that conscious step of, yeah, I want to live abroad and I move? Can you describe a bit more the difference between the two?
Growing up, we moved countries around every 2, 3, or 4 years because of my father's job. And so usually it would be kind of, I would say, almost like a bit of a last minute decision, because it would just happen kind of spontaneously. Luckily, or maybe not luckily, maybe this was intentional, but I didn't know about it. It always happened in the summer, which meant that it didn't interrupt our school year. So we would kind of finish the school year and then during the summer move to this new country. And, each time was different because it was a different country, but also I was a different age. So my own reaction to the news of that we were moving was always different. And then the first week in the new place was different because as we get older, our perspectives change. And I think then I moved, the first time that I moved, and it was my own personal decision, was when I was 18 and I moved to the UK to study. And I think that was really exciting because it was the first time that I got to choose where I was going to live. So I remember, making a list of the universities that I wanted to go and see and the ones that I wanted to apply for. And then, when I got in and then actually moving, my dad went with me, and it was really, nice to decorate my dorm room and all of that. And then I moved several times in the UK. I stayed in the UK for actually 16 years, which is the longest that I've ever lived in one place, although I moved a lot during those 16 years. And then in 2021, I moved to Malta. And I think that was a very different move as well. Of course, I'm a lot older, and it was completely my decision. Also, it was during COVID, so it was kind of a bit of a weird time. But I think it has changed. Some things have changed in the sense that how I make my decisions and how I settle into the new place, or maybe my first priorities now are different than when I was a child, obviously. But I think some of it stays the same, where it's still the excitement of the unknown and learning all these little cultural things. The first trip to the supermarket and you see like the different foods from what you were buying before, the little details about like, oh, okay, this is how it works here with rent, and where do I get Wi-Fi? These are small things, but it's quite an exciting time. And then the first few weeks, you're just kind of exploring. You're like a bit of a tourist. And that was the same as a child. Whenever we'd move to a new country, the first few weeks we were also exploring. And so that hasn't changed. Just probably now I have to deal with a lot more admin than before when someone else was doing
Yes,
it.
yes, all the admin. The paperwork never ends with this. I think every time it's like just the next level. They can call it, yeah, the next level of hell, next level of a video game, because every time it's something else. Maybe from your first permit to then your house, your the work that, or maybe starting your own business, and then maybe the citizenship or all the other things. So it's always an adventure, I think. And I hear you, these smaller bits and pieces of life that you have to figure out from scratch. I talked about it with other people as well, and it's always very fascinating. And you can find it daunting maybe if you think about it. Yes, I have to rebuild everything from scratch, or it can be indeed an adventure where you figure out, okay, what kind of new habits can I create here. And I see it a lot with people, maybe even like my brother who moved to Argentina last year, and he's been very active and very proactive, maybe also in his integration, but also he makes it an important point to be close to the community that he has already been part of. And I don't really see it the same way. I rarely socialize with the same, like with people from the same background. Sometimes it happens and then it's wonderful, but it's not my point of integration to, be in the same community that I came from, because there is so much more that we can explore. And I hear about it in your, maybe in your story between the lines. That was very beautiful that your parents had this a way of showing you the world as well. And they were very thoughtful, I hear. I think it's very nice for them. It's very thoughtful of them to think about you in the process and your experiences so you can feel the most integrated in that period of time with your life. How do you think you have grown and developed from those first times abroad with your family to now, after 16 years in the UK and then now in Malta for what is it, 3, 4 years, right? The Who are you now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the things that I kind of learned very early on from having to move so many times, I think it's being a bit more sort of open minded to the fact that every culture, even cultures that are very similar, they do have some their own way of doing certain things. And I think that's helped me a lot to be kind of just open-minded that not everyone thinks the same or does things the same. And I'm not talking about the big topics like religion but even just the smallest things like, growing up, my sister and I, we always studied at international schools because, of course, when you move so many times, you can't go to local schools because in the beginning you don't speak the language, and also the way that they teach certain things is very different between countries. But if you go to an international school, you kind of get the same level of education no matter which country you are in. So it has some consistency. But what that means is that then you have people from all over the world who attend these schools. You're not the only one. I was never the only kid that was from a different country or that was moving around. We were all like that, actually. And it kind of makes you see how different cultures are and how different customs are. Even the smallest things like, bringing the lunch to school, you get to see what other kids have for lunch, and it's very different. Different cultures, they have a very different way of packing that school lunch, or just the clothes that we would wear. Like, there is no like one fashion, or depending on which country you come from and where you just lived before this country, that's the fashion that you're going to bring. And so there was never this kind of stereotype of like, this is the way you do it, this is how it has to be done. And I think that's really helped me as an adult in that I'm, I rarely get surprised by someone doing something differently, because of course they would. They come from a different country or they've had a different background. So why would they do this things the same way? And I think that's really helped me just anytime that I move to a new country or even when I'm traveling, just being really accepting of the fact that we're all unique. We all do things in our own way, and it's not weird. It's not, there's no normal. It's just depends where you come from and how you've lived your life, and that's normal for
Hmm.
you.
I love this conversation because I only learned about the whole world of international schools when I moved abroad, because I was obviously not part of it when I was growing up. And indeed, what you're saying sounds to me like a very healthy way of learning about different cultures and different customs and people in general, whether you're in that specific environment because you're moving or because you want to be part of it. I also know of people who bring their kids to such schools so they can have this much broader overview of life and the world. And I know it might sound very disruptive when you say, yeah, I've moved a lot as a child, but I also know that I have a couple of friends who are already, they have been together for more than 20 years and their kids are teenagers now. And one of them just moved to another country to study at the university. So it's like this vibe, this idea, these values of exploring the world that I love a lot. And the way they moved abroad like that every couple of years, they lived in Bulgaria for a while, first when I was here. And now they already spent their 2 years in Korea. Now they're traveling in Asia because they could bring their kids to schools like that, but also because they're working at such schools. So I love this whole conversation, and this might be also the future of education sometimes, right, for some people with a certain, let's say, vision of what their kids life can look like, because it opens up so many opportunities, not only in terms of, yeah, maybe skills and then where you feel you can fit with your talents, but also just having that very collaborative, very open-minded approach to life and work. And to work specifically, I would like to discuss with you, because I know that you are part and you have organized such way of working as a collective. So you are a freelancer and you collaborate with other freelancers on small and big projects, depending. And then the idea is that you have a team around you, a team of experts that are also coming from all over the globe. Because of this collective, you can work on some really impressive projects, which probably also has some challenges in itself, because again, you, on the one hand, yes, you're very creative and diverse and you have all these different experiences, but also indeed you're very diverse. And in terms of work, sometimes you need to accommodate for this diversity. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I've always worked in teams, right? I started freelancing in 20 after leaving a full-time job in marketing, but marketing by nature is a collaborative industry. Like you do need a team. Of course, you can do a lot of things by yourself, but different perspectives, different ideas, different ways of doing things, it only helps you in marketing. And so when I went freelance, quite consciously, I didn't really want to work by myself all the time. Also, I'm a social person, so I think I would just not enjoy being by myself all the time. It's one thing to work on your own at home, but I need to talk to people on a daily basis. I think otherwise I just go a little bit, into my own, too much in my head. So in the very, very early stages of being a freelancer, I was able to collaborate, and I wouldn't say at that time it was proper teamwork, but it was kind of a collaboration, and it helped me to see where it could go. And this would be, for example, like if I was making a website for a new client, I would do the kind of the maybe the structure and the copy and the SEO, and then someone else would do the design and development. And we wouldn't really collaborate, but there would be a little bit of overlap. So it kind of made me see, okay, there is a possibility that I might be able to make this better in my future freelance life. I joined a really amazing community of freelancers. Hoxby operates kind of like an agency, but it's all freelancers behind the scenes. And the beauty of joining this community at the time, I don't remember how many people were part of it, but it was in the thousands, was that then I met a lot of other freelancers from all around the world. And so I kind of started to create my own kind of network of people that I thought, well, we're very similar in the way that we work, maybe in our kind of approach to life, and we have complementary skill sets. I'm not a designer, so meeting a freelancer who's really good at design but also understands branding and marketing, etc., it kind of opens a lot of doors for how we can collaborate. And then it was just about finding a way to bring these things together for my clients, because then my clients can benefit from this as well, because then they don't have to work with five different freelancers. They work with me, and behind the scenes, I'm working with five different freelancers, but they're just working with me. And I have one of the best examples now is one of my clients is a consultancy, and I look after all of their marketing. So websites, their blog, newsletters, LinkedIn, infographics, lots of different things. and they work mostly with me, although they have met the other freelancers. And behind the scenes, there's me, there's a copywriter, there's a project manager, there's a designer, there's a developer, and we work as a team. And the difference in that is that we do actually work as a team. We know what everyone else is doing. We collaborate. We can, help each other out. Just recently, I was having a bit of a struggle with another client that I felt like perhaps they were not so happy with the results that we were giving them. And I wanted to find the best way to talk about it and find a solution. And so I just, with my team, we got on a call and we discussed it. And I think that's the beauty of having teamwork is you can solve these really challenging problems with someone else. You don't have to do it all on your own. And I think that's amazing. And of course, in fact, most of the people that I work with on a daily basis, we've never actually met in real life. We live in different countries, sometimes complete opposite parts of the world, or sometimes, a lot of them, they might be freelancers or digital nomads. So they spend, 3 months here, 4 months there. So I never quite know exactly where they're going to be. That can be challenging in working together, but it's not as difficult as you might think. You have to have good communication, respect, mutual respect, and just trust. You trust that the other person is doing their job, even if you don't see them or you don't speak to them every day or they're not online when you're online. It's okay. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing, just like you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. That comes with practice. In the beginning, it's not so easy, but the more you do it and you realize it's okay. We still get everything done. There is, as long as there's trust, respect, and good communication, it's very, very possible to work in this way.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm hearing a lot about the power of the collective and the power of the community around you that can help you with many different things. In this specific case, we're talking about delivering the work, right? The tasks, but also I'm kind of speculating, but because I've been in the same situation and we seem to have quite similar personalities, it also helps you feel like you are part of something bigger. And maybe even it provides certain comfort in those parts of the day or week or month when you feel alone and maybe lost as well, right? Because I assume these people, some of them, as you said, they're traveling a lot and they also are living abroad very often. So you recognize the same challenges and you are there for each other in those. Yes, I understand what it is to go to the migration office. It probably means the whole day will be dedicated to that. And then, okay, I can accommodate for that. It's not going to be weird to ask for that or to even take some time for yourself for those specific things.
I think it solves a lot of challenges that freelancers experience because, as you say, like loneliness is one, not feeling like you're part of a team is one, finding clients is one, and having this network means that you help each other out with finding clients. I can bring a client to a freelancer and then they can bring a client for me. And we don't have to go out into the universe and try to find clients all the time. And also being able to deliver more, being more competitive. A lot of times as freelancers, we lose out on jobs because we don't tick all the boxes, right? Because maybe the client is looking for SEO and PPC, and you can only do SEO. So now you don't get this client. So this way it allows you to kind of deliver more. You become much more of an asset to your clients because you can tick more boxes and you make it easy for them because they don't have to go and find another freelancer. You already found them, you vetted them, you trust them, and you're going to manage all of that. So I think it helps solve so many challenges that we have as freelancers that then become much smaller challenges, and also just having this community of people that you can ask for help, you can ask for advice. Someone just today asked me if I could help them figure out how much to charge a client for a piece of content. And back in the days of my corporate career, you don't give advice to your competitors, you know what I mean? But in the world of freelancing, it's different. We're not competitors. We're all part of a community. There is work for all of us, and we help each other. I had so much help in the beginning from other freelancers who helped me understand, like, how should I price my services. So now I'm happy to help someone else, even if it means that they're literally offering the exact same thing that I'm offering, but it's okay. That's kind of my biggest advice that I say to anyone who wants to have any kind of like freelance career or remote working, whatever you want to call it, is build a really good community around you. And that's kind of a community that's for your professional life. Of course, they can overlap and we often become friends, but it's different when all of your friends have regular 9 to 5 jobs. They don't always understand. Whereas if you have a community of other freelancers, we totally understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I do recognize that. And would you say that this setup, let's say either freelancing or freelancing together as a collective, is something that is happening more and more? Because from what I see, and also maybe this is a good setup for people like us who travel a lot, because it might not be that easy that often for us to be employed. We might need to jump through many, many hoops, especially if we're coming, in our case, from outside of European Union, like me, right? Maybe you, as a European Union citizen, you have a bit of a different setup for that. But for me, for example, that's also how I started freelancing back in as well 2018, where I had to figure out how to get the job, which was only working with freelancers. And ever since, I haven't changed that setup. I actually appreciate it much more. The future of work, let's say, both for us and also for experts like us, how does it look to you?
There are many different reasons why people want to freelance. And for me, it's just the freedom, right, of being able to choose how I work, when I work, who I work with is very important as well. When I had a full time job, I worked at an agency. I don't get to choose my teammates, I don't get to choose my clients. I have to do the job. Whereas now you get a lot more of that freedom. It's a growing sector, I suppose. A lot more people are choosing the freelance route, and it's amazing. And I think a lot more companies are also now more open to working with freelancers, which is great because it wasn't always the case. I think when I first started and before as well, I think there was a little bit of mistrust from organizations as to, these freelancers. We don't know them. We don't know what they're doing. We can't see them. They're not here in the office. We don't know what they're up to. We can't control them. But now there's a bit more, I guess, acceptance that this is just the way that companies are moving, and you can trust these freelancers. And there are some amazing freelancers that will give you exactly what you're looking for at the highest level. You just have to trust that they will deliver. And it's nice to see more of that, but at the same time there are so many more freelancers, so it's a bit more of a competitive landscape, I believe, especially in marketing. Although I say that because this is the area that I work in, but I have noticed it has become more competitive now, especially SEO, content, copywriting. You do see a lot more competitiveness for the same openings, the same jobs. I think it's okay. There's room
Mhm.
for everyone, I suppose.
Yes. And what would be a piece of advice that you would give to such companies who want to work with freelancers?
Working with freelancers is great, and the advice I would give to companies is to keep them informed about what's going on in your company. Because even though they're not technically an employee and they're not physically in your office and they're not attending your internal meetings, it's still really a good idea to let them know what's going on because they have a lot to offer. They have an external perspective, and they can also kind of help you achieve your objectives, and they can also help you make things more efficient. If you're paying a freelancer to create content for you, for example, but you're not telling them what's going on in your company, what your vision is, what's going to happen in the future, you're kind of limiting the impact that they can have. So I would say, don't treat them as employees because we are not employees. We are service providers, we are suppliers, but also, keep freelancers informed about what's going on, and you'll be surprised how much of an input they can have if you kind of open those doors and let them in to know what your plans are.
I love that. And I'm already hearing and seeing some of the people I know are very passionate about the topic to nod and clap, maybe, because indeed that's such an important piece of advice. Thank you so much, Joanna. And then, as we are wrapping up, I would like to ask you, because sometimes I do these kind of recaps of the lessons learned, but because you have such extensive experience, maybe you can recap the lessons you learned about yourself, the work, and maybe even life in general, as you have lived abroad basically all of your life.
It's really difficult to think about the lessons learned, because most of these lessons you don't even realize that you're learning them, right? But I think just being open minded. Open minded is maybe not even the right term. It's just very accepting of everyone's situation, everyone's background, not even just accepting, but just not even questioning it, because you don't even think anything is weird about it because it's different. You just accept that it is different because it is. And that's it. You don't have to question, you don't have to try and figure out where it comes from. Also, just being maybe comfortable in uncomfortable situations, having had many first days at a new school, it was not weird to be have a first day in a new job, or a first day in a new anything. A first day in a new situation is nothing to be scared of. But also, just I think building resilience, being and knowing that things will work out. The beginning always feels strange, and so many things that you just didn't expect or you didn't know, or it took longer than you thought, or whatever it is, but just understanding that it will be okay, it will work out. Time, just give it some time.
One thing that I take out from all the conversation, something that really impressed me, even though of course it's how it is when you said, of course they're different because they're coming from different places. When you were talking about the school, I think that's this kind of clarity and this kind of knowledge, maybe even embodiment of the fact that yes, everyone is different and it's beautiful, it's wonderful like that. That's how it should be. Is something that I felt. I just felt that confidence in you about this is how it's supposed to be, and I love that because, indeed, as you said, it gives so much to us as people and gives us so much kind of collective knowledge that we can benefit from, that we can embrace, we can learn from. But also, if we're talking about professional lives, this is where we get the most benefit for the business, for our growth, for the other people, for the professional development, and for the benefit for the society with the products and services that we are creating. I absolutely love this conversation. It really, like, time passed so quickly, I didn't realize. And yes, I'm super grateful for the time. And I wanted to ask you where people can learn a bit more about you and your work.
Well, the best place is probably LinkedIn. I'm probably the most active on a professional level on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Joana Vega Ferreira. And if you want to learn about my business, it's called JVF Marketing. Very creative name, JVF, my initials. But actually, why not? But that's the kind of business side, and I have a website, so you can learn more about that. And then on a personal level, if you want to connect with me on Instagram, I travel a lot. Uh, for fun these days, and post a lot of pictures about my travels. And it's Joanna V Marketing on Instagram.
Awesome. Where are you going next?
Next, I'm going on a Mediterranean cruise at the end of
Wow.
August. So yeah, that's always nice. It's Italy, a few Greek islands, and Barcelona,
Mm.
finishing in
Oh,
Spain.
wow.
Yeah, so it's always nice. Mediterranean in August. It's going to be
Yes.
busy, but it's going to be lovely.
Amazing. Well, enjoy it. Good luck with that. And thank you so much for being here.